It is what it is. Hello, everyone. As I'm saying, it is what it is. Welcome, Kimberly. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi, Rick. Good to see you. I'm
Yes,
happy you're back.
I am
Uh,
back from disappearing on you from last week.
yes,
Yes.
you did. Again, you did it again. It was very good reason. And I'm, very happy that everything turned out to be fine because I was concerned. I think we all were, and it turned
Yeah.
out to be fine.
Yeah. No, everything's hunky dory. And but and it's the experience I had last week is actually very relevant to our topic. But before I really get into that, I think people are noticing that there's an
There's
ex.
somebody else in the room with us, right? Hello. So I want to introduce our fabulous guest, Kimberly. She's a dear friend of mine. She's a family law attorney who really helps her clients through guiding them through this, challenging process by using coaching principles, by using her incredible knowledge, not just of the law, but also of how we function as human beings, right? And how to really go through a difficult process like a divorce and separation and custody in a more empowered way. And I met Kimberly while we were coaching in a coaching room, and full disclosure, that's something I've been going through for a while, and she's been incredibly helpful along the way. She's helped me really like shift my perspective on things, really focus in places where it's a little more useful for me to focus on and move away from, some of the thoughts that I had and some of the ways that I was seeing this that was not really serving me. And I always say that had I met her earlier, I would have saved so much money in legal fees, so much money, because she really, really helped me understand what was useful to bring up during a process like the divorce with my lawyer, who sometimes I'm sure she will speak to it, but sometimes the lines can get a little blurry because, something like a divorce is a very emotional process. And when you're in the thick of it, in that fight or flight, narrow focused, place, sometimes you just need to release that. And your lawyer may not be the best person for that, unless she's Kimberly. Unless she's Kimberly, not all lawyers are created equal. So that's what I wanted to say about this. I've always been so grateful to have met her. She was really a lifesaver so many times. So I love her. I wanted you to meet her and her wisdom and everything that she has to share. So, Kimberly, I'm going to leave it to you. If you want to speak to what you do and how you got here, whatever you want to talk about.
Well, first of all, it's a mutual admiration club. So it was an incredible bit of divine intervention that we met and that you latched onto that and that we've since done a group together centered around
Right.
those exact
Right.
things, getting through that. So yeah, I'm a divorce attorney, well, I'm a family law attorney, which of course includes divorce and custody. That's most of the cases. That's going on 9 years. I had previous incarnations and careers before that, so I was a returning student and happened into the family law stuff. And then it's taken this long because it's very new. Kind of, I've always had a really coachy, because I coached individuals like 20 years ago, just general stuff. And, but I always had that really coachy attitude with clients because I saw them spinning their wheels and just spewing energy at all sorts of things that weren't going to get them anywhere. And what it does is taking all this energy away from the things that really can either advance the ball or just make them feel better and get them a little bit of sleep at night. I just saw way, way, way too much angst and unnecessary angst. And I never want to diminish anyone's experiences and feelings. They're all valid. It's kind of how the filter and the processing of them. And the problem is that it also spills out onto the attorneys. And that attorneys, I mean, I'm looking around me and watching colleagues, including myself, experiencing entire too much angst because we care, because we're not impervious to their feelings, whether they understand that or feel that or get that impression or not, we're not. We take it on. We have abysmal statistics, health and well-being statistics in the field, especially family law lawyers. And I lost a very dear friend and colleague who was a fierce family law attorney, and she was 43 years old. And that was, let's just say, indirectly at her own hand. But we lose colleagues regularly to many things: alcohol and substance abuse, suicide, mental health issues, attrition, burnout, and all that. So those two things, seeing way too much angst on both sides of the table, are what brought me around to want to go like, wait, this dynamic can be better. It doesn't have to be like this. And just because it has been like this historically, it doesn't have to be like this.
Mm.
So that's where the divorce custody GPS, so you get some guidance, know where you're at, know the procedures, in the beneficial perspective, and the power that's actually, right in your palm. You just don't know it. And then I also do, just separate aside from that, I mean, skilled clarity is my business. That's kind of the bucket that DC GPS is under, as well as the skilled clarity, skilled satisfaction side, which is kind of, you don't have to be in divorce or custody to want to level up your life or deal with some issues or accomplish some goals, sort things out. I think clarity is the big missing factor in all of this. It's not clear and it's not out there. If we're going to talk about divorce custody specifically, the legal system is not user friendly, and it doesn't tell you these things. And your lawyer may or may not tell you these things, but that's where that angst comes from. And then it, can be this mutually kind of deleterious feeding of energies back and forth between you and your attorney. And it does cost money. It did cost you probably tens of thousands of dollars.
A lot of money.
That could have been circumnavigated without taking anything away from the actual case itself, right?
Well, could have been avoided. Could have been avoided by perhaps just going to a therapist and having those conversations with a therapist or a coach.
Maybe.
Right? Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. Possibly therapist. It depends. I mean, you have to get, pretty niche and credential specific there. Coach wise, that's why now being a lawyer guide. So that's what I call, my coaching is as a lawyer guide, because I am a lawyer. I do have the law status. And then, but all my coaching background and all of that comes in on the guide part. And how do we walk through this? You got to get from point A to point B. It's just all about how you do it. And, as a overarching principle, I do all of this because, including just getting into family law in general, because I'm waging war on resignation and inevitability mindset. And by that, I mean thinking this is how it is, this is how it was, this is how it's going to be, or focusing on the I can't do thises instead of, but I can do that. That's where some really profound shifts come out of some really tiny adjustments. So I'm all about micro adjustments for macro impact.
I love that. I love the phrase, because it's for me. It's always been those. All of it. I mean, the package is wonderful. The GPS, it's a metaphor I use often. But the last thing you said, it's the micro adjustments for maximum, right? It's we underestimate what little steps we need to take. The little ones, right? We think, oh, I got to do this big thing. I got to do this thing. No. It's just the little things, right? So it's that's
that sucker of that all or nothing approach. And it feels so helpless. I mean, it's the perfect, Carol Dweck mindset. It's the fixed mindset that it's all or nothing. Yeah. And it's like, no, there's this you're missing the massive opportunity in between, and it's so debilitating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unnecessarily debilitating.
I just want to acknowledge we've got a number of people that have popped on, and please on the chat just say hello. Even tell us a little bit where just mention where you're from, kind of a thing. And also throughout the episode, if you have any questions or comments to Kimberly or Fatì or myself, please put them in the chat. But
please, that seemed to work really well last week. I had a bunch of questions. So, you have an opportunity here. You have you have Rick and I that you get every week, and then you have Kimberly here. If you have any specific questions,
You hopefully
go
get
ahead. Yeah, just go ahead and ask the questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as long as you two keep an eye on the chat, because I'm gonna take my glass off and on, I forget the contact.
Yeah.
So
Well,
No,
I can
we'll
see you,
look.
but I can't
We'll look
see the
up.
tiny print. So
Yeah. No. That's cool. No, that's remarkable because it's something I never kind of considered. Like my field is in medicine. I was a paramedic for 30 years, and the work itself gets in the way of living. And and first responders and the military, we're quite familiar, especially with the media and things like that, of what post-traumatic stress and the outcome of post-traumatic stress, and some of the results of not coping well, right? And I think you kind of hinted and led towards that. It's something I would not even thought of as being part of being a lawyer, like like as part of that in the psychic of being a lawyer. How you would wear your heart on the sleeve and be part of, I, and I'll be honest, like I always felt lawyers were just the facts, very cold, kind of a thing, but that's all we deal with, right? And to hear that, well, they're human.
turns out, right? Turns out, yeah.
most of us are.
No, yeah, but I mean, but yeah, no, it's that's an eye opener, Kimberly. That's a real eye opener for me to hear that there's the mental health issues in that field.
Yeah, I talk about it a lot and do some subparts of the course and stuff, and certainly Fati, that we went through, and it's about there's an animal on both sides of the table. We're animals. We're animal beings with animal circuitry and animal nervous systems, and that energy and stuff passing back and forth. So, I mean, you can find plenty of attorneys would say, "I'm not like that. Doesn't affect me. My life's fine." It's like, well, maybe it is. Maybe it's great. Maybe you figured out how to do that, or maybe they don't get as emotionally bogged down. But I've found numerous colleagues who even would say that. But then, if you kind of step back and kind of observe their life or their health statistics, when it's bad enough that they're saying, no, it's all good. I don't take this home with me. And I'll tell you what, it's so bad. They posted their blood work. The numbers are so bad on the wall next to their desk, thinking this is going to somehow inspire them to be healthier. And it's like, well, so I understand that it's to each of us to, take our own inventories, so to speak, and do that. But really, overall, if you look at it, there's two animals, and you've got two. No matter how sensitive, I mean, I get it. I'm probably way over on the empathic end of the spectrum, so I'm super sensitive, and I've never said I don't take it home with me.
Yeah.
I'm doing better at taking less home and gaining that, but it's taken years and health impacts and all sorts of scary things, and my friends, experience and watching the people around me and the detrimental effects. And then I don't know anyone who's truly, well, I could probably find someone who's like truly thrilled with what they do every day. We're all like, I'm making it. We do it because we think it's important. But it's like, oh man, that's just not enough. And it doesn't make us better attorneys. But I do think, Rick, you're right. You watch TV, and the attorneys are the absolutely, we're Teflon, right? It's like, no, and maybe in contracts law, maybe if I were doing general counsel, writing contracts all day, it would be easier to do that. But certainly not when we're dealing with one of the top 5 biggest issues people are going to deal with in their entire life, maybe the biggest. A lot of people, first time, any experience with any of this, it's completely over their head, overwhelming. They're terrified, they're frozen up. And then they're afraid of us because we are Teflon. And you say, I thought they were just about the facts. It's like, well, we try to be. And that's one thing. And you just said that basically, that being approached with all these long emotional narratives time after time after time, it's like, we are counsel, but we are not counselors. in
Mm.
that regard, in the
Yeah.
therapeutic sense.
Yeah.
Now, even with my background's in psychology and coaching. So, but even so, it takes away from our ability to execute our jobs, to swift through. And then those are the clients that get their bill at the end of the month that are like, what? And it's like, well, you know, so I mean, I have lists of things that are like, what can you do to be a better, client? Meaning that's just going to help things along. It's going to save you costs and all that.
Hmm.
But I think that grasping that there's a human being on the other side and that we're all equipped with mirror neurons, whether we like it or not,
Yeah.
is super important. And I think it's super new idea to a lot of people. Certainly a lot of people that I sit across the table from.
I like the approach because I've had dealings with lawyers, more on a real estate and kind of like small claims kind of a deal, right? And I just your approach seems so refreshing.
It's so different too, though, right? Like I've had a real estate attorney too. Like they're completely different jobs. I mean, they're both lawyers, but they're completely different jobs. I mean, we're talking about breaking up people's lives. We're talking about, custody issues. We're talking about like the deepest, most painful parts of us, right? Because on the other end of it, right, I want to speak a little bit to what it feels like to be on the other side of it, right? I
Mhm.
think on the other side of it, and as Kimberly said at the beginning of this, those feelings are super valid. Those feelings are strong and they're difficult and it's challenging. And for some people, it's the hardest thing they've been through, right? So, and I think that as you get into it, you're in such state of fight or flight that you are looking for protection, right? You're looking for somebody save me from this. And you hire a lawyer, it's like, well, this is your job, right? But a lot of what you really need to process and you need to like calm down and like start to understand has to do with the way you are experiencing this on an emotional level, right?
Mm.
And I think that it is hard for lawyers to deliver some of the really difficult truths about the law, right? That, in my opinion, this is my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, some of the laws are not necessarily fair, right? But that's besides the point. That's besides the point. There's going to always be things that we don't find fair. There's nothing we can do about the laws, right? And that's a really difficult truth to deliver and to hear, to receive, right? When you feel like something is deeply wrong, right? Because you know your own story better than anybody else, right? And then a law comes and applies to your life, and a judge makes a decision about your life, or lawyers tell you what you need to do with your life. Those are not easy things to accept and receive. And guess what? What makes it even harder is when you're in a state where like your emotions are all over the place and you need the release and you need someone to listen to you. Because your emotions are like, there's so many emotions that are getting triggered. They're like just, like pushing out signals, like, there's an alarm bell going on constantly because literally the ground feels like is like shaking under your feet, right? And the problem is that yes, while all of these things are really difficult, while you're dealing with with all these different elements at the same time, it really feels really overwhelming, right? It feels so overwhelming that it's hard to like discern where to put your attention, how to show up. You're like completely taken over by fight or flight state,
Mm.
right? And so I think the point that we're trying to make is not that it's not difficult, and it's not that that's not challenging, or that some of these things may not be fair. Right? We all have different values and we all see the world from a different perspective, right? It is not useful though, right? It is not useful, but what it would be useful would be to figure out a way to have that emotional release, to process what you're going through, right? So that you can be in a better place to deal with the other really difficult parts of this that may have to do with accepting that the law requires you to do certain things, that you have to now, show documents and do things that you don't like to do, right? So it's all about really preserving your energy and processing things in a healthy way. And it's not about saying, who's right or wrong, the lawyers have it harder, the clients have it harder. It's just about, a lawyer has a function that is to help you navigate the law, right? And the only way that they can deliver those hard truths is for you to be in a place that you can feel empowered and receive it, and not have all your energy sucked up by all that you need to process, all that you need to accept, all that feels painful, frankly, right? And so when I say I could have saved a lot of money, I really mean it, because in my head, I was like, oh my God, I cannot get a therapist because I have to pay all this money to my lawyer, right? But I did end up spending a lot of money in legal fees, because we would be in this like cycles of like really talking to each other, not really hearing each other, right? Me feeling like I was not being seen, and like, and like just completely taken over by my emotions and what was happening, and my lawyer trying to deliver, and perhaps even feeling triggered by some of my reactions, or me just being all over the place, right? So it's not about right or wrong. It's about, what I learned from Kimberly was about, how can we set both people up to be able to function together, to do what we need to do together, because it's a collaborative relationship, right? In the best way possible, in the most efficient way possible, in the least painful way possible, because we have to be honest, it is a difficult process. There's no way to go through this and be like, oh, la la la, this is amazing. It's not amazing. It's difficult. You're breaking up your marriage with, and you're like, or custody, you're fighting over your children. It is difficult, but there is a way to go through it that makes it so much easier. And that's kind of what I really learned from working with Kimberly, doing this group coaching, program that we did, taking her advice sometimes when I felt triggered, and, also time, time really helped me like process some of this stuff and show up a little bit differently. So.
Yeah, I would say that, I don't know what the percentage is, but it is high. Well, and I'll speak for myself, because I think not all attorneys are like this, and I think they could do a little more of expectation management. But expectation management only goes so far as, I try to set these things up from the consult and go, listen, I'm a straight shooter. You are going to hear it how it is. I don't mince words. I'm going to sugarcoat things, and I have no kid gloves. So as long as that's okay with you as a style, and the reason that's my chosen style is, I think it insults both of our time, and it certainly costs you a lot of money if I'm sugarcoating things and, dragging that along. And I make sure before we sign contracts that they're like, yeah, so that I can always remind them of that conversation. And that even if they, get triggered, they'll come back around and be like, that's right. I'm like, because this will take longer, and you need to hear cha-ching every time you see on an invoice, repeat request from client, or that we're repeating the same conversation. And that there's this I think there's a key part of that, because it's so important that clients feel heard. However, it's so often conflated that they are thinking they are not heard, and they're conflating that with not being agreed with. So just because I'm not hopping over and saying, I get all your reasons that this should all just, so obviously go your way. However, I'm not changing my legal position, because I'm your tether to legal reality. I do not get paid to tell you what you want to hear. So, and I will remind people, outright in emails, I will say, I think you've conflated these two things for the moment. Please reconsider. How many occasions we've spoke. I am hearing you, but in light of, again, the law, like you said, Fatì, it's we put things, we have to map it onto the facts, onto the law. And then, there's squishy rooms around that. That's where we figure out where our strategy is, how we frame things. But I think sometimes words are so powerful. We know this. If I think the two most powerful, words there are is I am blank, because we're programming, obviously, the neural circuitry and everything. Whatever I am, we are. I am sick and tired of this day. Well, this day is going to suck then.
Yes.
I am, it's the old, who is it? Is it McEwen, Greg McEwen, that says, when you put your feet on the floor in the morning outside your bed, you say, I'm going to have an awesome day, or it's going to be a good day, or whatever, because as I am, the brain is so susceptible. So if we can switch you kind of it's almost like translating something into a different language. So you get the essence of where people are coming from and the essence of the law, I guess. But you change this into, and that there is language that not only will get people further in the process, where get them a better foothold in their direction, but it also has this amazing effect on their nervous system and on their thinking and on changing some neural grooves. I mean, we can say all day long, micro adjustments, macro impacts, but the in between is the consistency. It has to be consistent, over and over and over and over and over. It's, what is it? Any, habit, if you're repeating something back or redoing 7 times, and if you blow one of those, you got to start over. So it can take hundreds and hundreds of times, obviously. And, that's relative to the size of those, ruts in our head, and we all have them. I have tons of them, but I also know what it is to drive out of that rut enough times that I start making the new path. And that's where it's so beneficial. Those little shifts over time done consistently. And that's what I think we have to do. I think we have to make the effort to reframe, translate, if you will, over time. And the relief is amazing. Like, clients will be like, oh, yeah, no, that's a bad word. I could say, and then they get that it's not this or that. There's a different way to approach it, say the same thing, but get a much better reaction from the animals they're dealing with.
Yeah.
So it's heady. I think it takes not hand holding in a condescending way, but it does take that guidance there. It also takes people willing to do the work.
Well, and that's the one word, and Fatih and I like to use that often, is the work, right? Is there's work involved, right? And it's a nice segue into today's topic, which is, because we're really talking about shifting perspectives, right? We all have perspectives of what we're seeing, right? Like the neutrality of what's in front of us is only tainted by our perspectives, and I think it takes people like yourself to point people in knowing that that's the fact of, well, these are your perspectives of things, right? They may not necessarily be true, and is there other shifts and things that we can look at differently to realign with what really is the facts, and or what really is happening, to get more into flow. So do you I see the power in realizing that, and in shifting my perspectives, or changing that word to my beliefs or whatever, to realign better. Like you said, the law is the law, but how we view it or how we work with it really depends on our perspective to it. Like, if we look at it as the enemy, then that's exactly what we're going to get. We're going to get nothing but confrontation, friction, right? So
it's like a school of, like, literally it's self-development on steroids. I believe, like, if you go through something like divorce and you want to go through it in a more empowered way, it really becomes an opportunity to do some work on yourself. And what an opportunity to master your circumstances, right? Because it's the prime example of when those circumstances are completely out of your control. You can't control what the other person's going to do. You can't control what the judge is going to do. You certainly cannot change the laws on the spot, right? and it becomes really an exercise of finding your power in those places where you have power. And it often is how you show up and how you do the work, right? So it involves really an investment in doing the work on yourself. Perhaps, like I said earlier, either hire a therapist or a coach, right? Really make an investment in you, so that you can show up differently, you can show up more empowered. And when you are in that different brain state, more empowered brain state, now you can really work on what matters, right? Well, what are the facts? It's very factual, right? What are the facts, like the strategic too sometimes, right? And what should I focus on? How can I communicate this in the best way possible? Like what's the gist of what I want to say, right? Instead of writing pages, and I used to tell Kimberly a lot, I don't even have to do this anymore. I used to write pages and pages of emails to my lawyer in response to something that really triggered me, and it's like,
Right.
when I say is the perfect schools, because all those triggers are going to come your way. You're going to get poked like a bear. You're going to get poked in the hardest places, right? So what a better opportunity, right? So I used to write these emails in response, and they were super long. And of course, now my lawyer's taking how long to read them and respond. And I'm responding to another email that's another 2 pages long. And you know what? I learned to just like save them to draft now. I learned that that urgency that I felt to respond right away, it was triggered by fight or flight. There was no actual urgency to respond in that moment other than my need to seek, to be heard or justice, or like just make my point and defend myself, right? And those are really low states of being, right? That's fight or flight or freeze, right? And so when you can just use that as a release technique instead of responding to your lawyer, that becomes that email that you're still going to write those emails, right? Still going to write those emails. That now becomes emotional release if you don't send it. Then the next day you can read it again. And I learned, and now I take my time. I take a day or two. I no longer write pages and pages. My emails may be just a paragraph that I may wait on, and then I'm like, oh, I can send it, or I'll be like, oh, it just needs one sentence, right? Because frankly, and this applies to any situation where those triggers are there, difficult relationships. So we're talking about divorce because I think it's like probably the prime example when that is like most heightened, right? You just realize that the more I get to the point and the more I keep this to what my lawyer's job is, and the better outcomes, not only I'm going to have a better outcome, I'm going to have a better relationship with my lawyer, I'm going to save a lot of money too, right? And like a therapist or a coach is going to be a much better support than your lawyer is going to be, unless again they're Kimberly, but most lawyers are not trained in speaking to you or helping you emotionally, right? Mine is not, right? So I would have been much better off spending that money on a professional than, in the ways that I reacted and responded. And I didn't know any better. And I think it was meant for me to go through that so that I could meet Kimberly and see things differently, right? And really spread that message to people that I know that are going through the same thing. So.
Yeah, just so you know, that also those long emotional narratives, we know who those are going to be coming from. We know our clients' styles right out of the gates. And the fact is, I am not alone, and it's just a fact that it is that if I'm not resourced for one of those at the time, it may get put until either later or the next day to open, because I have X number of things on my day. So if you think that being, the all caps, when I get the urgent all caps on an email, depending on who it's from, but usually the people I do that I know. I mean, if it's from a client who never does that, I know something's on fire. Nope, I get it. But from the people who overuse their caps and exclamation points and things like that, I also know that, and I try to respond to everybody within 24 to 48 hours, unless it's like a massive week or a massive question, then 72. But really, it's shorter than that. They will get bumped. They will get bumped because I do not have the time, and they are going to take time and energy from other clients. They have one, and I understand they have one case, and I have many, and I get that. But they need to understand, as I do, that there's important that I have the many and that they're actually detracting. It gets so bad that somewhere in here early in COVID, I think, and it really heightens this. And I also study, and I'm going to teach like mindfulness to lawyers and law students, and how important all of this self-regulation stuff is, and knowing the statistics on my field, that I was using the word email apnea before I'd heard it out there anywhere, because I realized when I was working, that I was holding my breath when I would go to open my inbox. It's like, yeah, that's not okay.
Mhm.
I would notice that I, I noticed that I grind my teeth, which I long grind my teeth, not usually at night and sleeping like over the years, but I was doing it while I was working. And so, and these little things, and then I realized that I was putting these band-aids on these things. For instance, my night guard, I would wear it when I was working instead of addressing that I have flat teeth because I'm grinding my teeth. I would wear my night guard and then keep working. Like this is before I was really hands-on, head-on addressing this like super proactively. And on the email apnea thing, I came up with that I can make my email smaller. So instead of opening it on my computer or even my iPad, I'd open it on my phone because somehow it's smaller there. And so I could then see what was in the box before I opened it full size on my computer. It's like, okay, these are band-aids on a compound fracture, right? I mean, so those things they do. I mean, that's happening. Any attorney that tells you that never happens is not telling you the truth.
Mm.
I'm not saying, some people probably do it more than others, but it does happen, and it's pragmatic, quite frankly. It is a practical reality of stuff we have to get done. And I love some of the stuff he said. Who is it said that we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. And
Yeah.
that's where the perspective, part comes in, and that we really can rewrite our present or our history. I mean, that's ours. We're authors of our history. People will go, what? No, it already happened. It's like, exactly. But you get to translate that into whatever you want now. And it can be the most miserable, most awful, those words, dull and, scarred and bloody and traumatic and all that, or you can look back and do like what Fatì, you've done this. You look back and you go, where's the value? What do I know that I would not have known? Sorry, I have a doggy who's a little stuck. Bud, is it stuck? Come here. I got you. There you go, sweet. Come here. There we go, Bob. There we go, Bob. Poor buddy. Um, he's an old guy. I'm sorry, bud. You okay? He's like, oh man, I was stuck. He needs a little help. And that you can look back and you can reframe it, and you can really, it's up to you to either mine the value or mine the garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it doesn't feel like a choice to people, but it is a choice. And whichever choice you make, and we know, I mean, empirically, research back, empirically affects your health and well-being. I mean, on a chromosomal level, not just a cellular level, but your interactions and all the ripples and the energy you put out into the world. So there's a benefit to that, to actually doing it the other way. You actually benefit. Whereas people like, no, I deserve to be pissed. I deserve this. And the F word, you said it, Fati, fair. That's the F word. Courts don't like it. Judges don't like it. The law wasn't written for it. It's like out, because the law is not, there's no intention in the law to be fair. The law is to be equitable. And that's not what, generally we think of as fair. We think of as fair as like 50-50. It's like, well, no, because there's a lot of horse trading that goes on.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but I think in some of those shifts, you get in that gray area between, how you think and how you can think. In skilled clarity, that's part of it. It became skilled clarity because my very good friend, I'll call her Anne, because she's a mover and shaker and has some cool stuff going on that, I will protect her anonymity. And she said skilled clarity. She's like, yeah, that's no bullshit. Sorry, I hope there's no rating on the show. There's no BS clarity. That's not half-ass clarity. That's like, work for it, earn it, execute it clarity. And it's like, yes. This isn't like 5 steps to simple clarity. Like that would not be the program for me to teach, to convey to people or to impart to clients. So we always talk about, you may be a CEO, you may want to be a CEO, you may never want to be a CEO, or whatever, but we're always CEOs of ourselves. So to me, within the program, that means curiosity, evolution and execution, and ownership. And I think all 3 of those things help you get through that dark wood of despair sometimes between what you think and what you can think. And those things really can benefit you that. And I love that you save stuff into drafts. That's perfect. I do that too. Don't think for 2 minutes that we don't fire emails off sometimes. Okay.
Yeah.
But I don't. And for anybody who's listening and wants to know how do I save money? Wait, how was it I save money? Use bullet points. You don't even have to use complete sentences of punctuation. If you bullet point things to me, I love it. The faster and more succinct you can be, this is where money is saved. This is also where you get judges' attention. You make their job super easy. So if you're ever kind of going it alone and that. But I really love when I get emails with fewer words, bullet me the stuff. Don't leave out things. And I know that's hard for clients to know, well, what do I include? What do I leave out? But that's money in your pocket. That's one of the biggest monies in your pocket right there.
Yeah, details. There's something I like you mentioned several times about clarity, and I like pointing clients towards that too. And I often use my little snow globe here as pointing to the fact of a busy mind, right? And I'm thinking about, when your clients are coming with it's unfair, it's on there, and they're kind of shaking it all up, right? For me, I don't see any chance of changing any perspective or seeing things differently until this settles, right? And I'm curious on your perspective of when clients have that busy mindset, the unfairness or whatever. Is there anything that you do with your coaching or that helps them settle so that they have an opportunity to shift their perspective?
If it's really, really, if things are really fired up, I will just say, let's get your calendar. Let's find a time we're going to regroup. We're going to get back together. And right now, will you promise me it might be walk around the block or take 3 deep breaths or whatever at the time that there's something really minimal that can kind of get a hook in maybe a little better trajectory or momentum. Some of the clients will do it, some won't, but I mean, I can't live for them. So I might postpone something. I might just say, you know what, if it's something that doesn't need, in that moment, let's just find, 20 minutes to regroup on this and give them time. And especially if it's a decision, sometimes it can work really constructively. If it's a decision, it's like, look, we're having all of this right now. This is not a now thing. This is maybe it's not, the possibility is in like a month, or it could be further out, or it could be a bridge that may never arise to be crossed. Like those, then I certainly will kind of table those so that they don't feel like every single thing that they feel like is on fire. Right. Because that's not good either. You can be very enabling. And I think I went through a long period of being far too accessible to my clients, far too doting and listening and all that, and it was like it wasn't good. It wasn't serving them best. That really sticking to my authentic approach, which is, I hope it's kind, I hope it's empathetic, but that's pretty, that's head on. That's like, look, we made an agreement that I'm going to set you straight because I don't want you going down the wrong road that long. Like, let's just nip it in the bud and get back over here, because that's just time and energy and money. So the sooner you do that, the sooner you save. Does that work for you? Are you with me? Yeah. I mean, I will ask them. I do this in consults sometimes too. Because the emotional narrative thing, I'll say, give me a word. You get to pick the word. It's a stock word. So if I feel like you're going outside of what I need to know, I tell you, I make it their word. So they give me a word that I can insert. They'll be like, I know, and I'll say like, elephant. And they'll be like, oh, and it's good for them. It starts that reinforcement and it kind of keeps the levity. And I didn't pick the word, so it's not my word. So there are those times you can loop back around. Otherwise, I might try and minimize the conversation. Conversations can get really risky for lawyers when you're like, I need it. I will maybe then sit down and write what may be a lengthy, well revised, really, comprehensively laid out email. Because at that point, I mean, I got to tell you, we got a CYA. We got a what we call paper the file.
Yeah.
Because individuals that continue like that are walking bar complaints.
Mm.
And it doesn't mean they have any basis, but I got to tell you, and everybody in their career at some time will defend a bar complaint, that it doesn't matter how out in left field they are. It takes us hours and hours and hours and hours to defend it, because we've got to organize and put up all of the emails and all of the this and all of that. So there are clients who I will do more in writing with, if just, the live dialogue stays in this, kind of that tenor.
Yeah.
They can't, either self-regulate, or that. There's always also that thing where then they go out and talk to all their friends or Aunt Jane, and, and they're like, when I got divorced, and it's like, oh man, like these are not your, like, they're your allies, but they are not your friends. Because like a real friend would be like, okay, you're kind of like, you said this like 28 times now, and you're just, wearing that groove deeper. I see it affecting you physically, or, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know anything about the law. But because then people latch onto those and they're like, well, but for her it was like this, and it's like completely other case, completely different case, completely different facts, completely different even laws that are implicated.
Yeah.
So talking to friends and family that want to, like, yeah, we'll get the other side, like those are the people you need to not, or maybe compartmentalize them and know that it's just a teeny piece, because really those are not helpful. Those actually, reinforce those neural grooves, the very ones we're trying to change.
Mm-hmm.
So really reaching out to people who respect and love you enough to kindly try and, I mean, they don't have to be a lawyer or a therapist or anything, but to kind of not let you just enable you to really, dig in those grooves even more. It's just not healthy for anyone. I mean, there's just health implications. And that's a huge part of, all of choice. That we're either, the two choices, and we're either bettering our system, and by system, I mean our infrastructure, our physical infrastructure, our mental and emotional infrastructure, or we're not.
Yeah.
So it's not just a choice of in the moment, in the situation, and that's where it doesn't really apply. I mean, this isn't just obviously divorce and custody, but even the little tiny things like during the day, those things like when, somebody pops into traffic or whatever, taking things personally. And that's a big thing in mindfulness practice. It's kind of, there's this really lofty thing, the 3 Ps. So it's not permanent, it's not perfect, and it's not personal. And it's like, well, I did fine with the first two. Then you go, it's not personal. Like, it's me.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but it's not. It's them or it's that. You, the me, is right here. Ally McBeal was eons ago. I don't know if anybody watched Ally McBeal. I did not at the time it was done, but then just for pure amusement during law school, I actually did. I thought it was really stupid when it first came out because I lived in Boston. I'm like, oh, that's ridiculous. And so I didn't watch it. And then, years and years later, when I was in law school, I watched, I'm like, oh, there's actually some really genius, like between the lines stuff here that I never would have got before.
Yeah.
But Ally McBeal had this great line, and she was asked, like, Ellie, why are your problems so much more important than everyone else's? She's like, because they're mine. I was like, yeah, okay. How do we not take things really personally? But it often isn't. Again,
yeah.
We're seeing the world as we are, not as it empirically is. So how do we come here where all of our power is? All of our power. It's so liberating.
Yeah.
So we have a question actually here. I do want to say something before we take that question. That what I realized, right? I think it's up for debate whether or not the law is fair or not, and I'm sure that now your hair is getting straight in your head. That's my opinion, right? Like, I feel like there are certain things in the law that could be improved. But what I realize is
Sure.
that there's nothing I can do about it. It is what it is, right? And whether I think that it can be better or different or more fair is still not going to change what's going on with my divorce, right? So that's really just the point, right? Because I think sometimes we tend to feel like, well, but this is really not fair. It really, really, really is not fair. And it's like, well, that could, sure, you could be completely right. But it still doesn't change the fact that there's nothing that your lawyer can do about it, because the law that they have to follow is the law that they have to follow, right? So it's not about it being fair or not. It's about it being what it is, right? And there's a place where you could possibly go and like fight that, right? Through elections, through, like activism, through,
Legislation.
awareness, legislation, right? But it
Yeah.
is certainly not going to be your divorce or your separation or whatever it is, right? So I wanted to make that point. But we do have a question from someone, from Maria. So she's asking, so how do we calm down on our own? What would be an effective technique?
Um, Maria, are we talking like if like overall, or if you're in the middle of a conversation? If I just cabin this, I mean, I guess there can be similar practices, but sometimes you have more time for one than others. There's I mean, mindfulness techniques. Some of the really simplest are to do some breathing work, like in the moment. I mean, breathe into and get in touch with your body, so it's not all up here. It disperses and dilutes things through your body. And I mean, breathing into the belly, up your head, and then even slower on the release, because that slow release actually, it turns down your heart rate, it turns down your blood pressure. And it may take a few, and this may sound simple, but this is the one of ways to like get into the parts of you that are those animal parts we were talking about. I mean, you're having this, infrastructural reaction that's then making it hard to get to your head, because when you're in that, then your brain part that we want, prefrontal cortex, just goes offline. So start with giving yourself a chance, and start with that physical. Give yourself an opportunity to then access this. Because sometimes we're trying to like, no, I want to be calm. I want to be calm. I'm going to be calm. I want to be calm. And that kind of doesn't, that just chases it away. It's like the moving horizon. So sometimes something physical. Fatih said something, if you're talking about like, instead of firing off that long emotional email, like she puts it in drafts and then goes back and sees like, do I really need to say this? How much of this was emotion? How much do I need to convey? And pulls out the language she doesn't need. I would even go so far as to say, turn it into bullet points and pull out the sentences you don't need and pull out the punctuation you don't need, so that it's concise. And what that does also in your brain is it simmers things down into more manageable pieces. You can sort of physically do that. But I do think sometimes you have to unplug. You have to say, and sometimes whether this is with a lawyer or dealing with your ex or whatever, you have to say, you know what? I'm not resourced enough to do this right now. I'm not walking away. I'm not hanging up. But what I do know that I need to do is I need to disengage for the moment. I need to go, you know, collect myself. And if we could talk about this, like, and then set a time so that it's not, so then you can't push it off and off and off and off and procrastinate. And then they know you're coming back too. I mean, that's just a good one, for anything. Don't keep going down that road. The minute you're aware that snowball's rolling, find a way to just take a breather, take a time out. And sometimes there are counselors out there, like relationship counselors, that go, sometimes you can't even speak when you get so up in it. You just go,
Yeah.
I just, and know that that's a code, time out. It's just time out, and that you're not running away. You're not blowing anyone off. You're just saying, I've exceeded my bandwidth for the moment and I need to regroup.
Just being honest about it, right? Just being honest. And like, I love the breathing technique that always works. That's something that sometimes you can just, even by holding your breath, no one even has to notice. You're already calming your nervous system down. But being honest and saying, you know what, right now in this moment, this is a little much for my nervous system. I need to take a break, maybe 20 minutes, maybe tomorrow, right? And that always works, right? When you're honest about things, and you're not getting weird about it and getting off the, the phone or whatever it is without really stating what's going on, then it's going to be received, happily, right? Because I think it's very obvious when we're charged up and we're triggered and we're having like a moment, everyone in the room is going to notice. And to be honest about it and be like, you know what, I know that nothing's good is going to come out of this conversation. I would like to take a break. I would like to move away from this, right? So that's another way. Another way I would say, Maria, is also, the release writing is actually a way to emotionally release, right? So the email became release writing without me meaning for it to be that, but that's one way to just say whatever that comes to mind, write it down, no filter. Don't worry, no one has to read it. You just put it down on paper. So that's one way. Another way is my favorite, empty chair technique. You just pretend that the person is there, or your ex, or your lawyer, or the judge, or the law, whatever it is that's triggering you, and you have that conversation again, completely unfiltered. You let everything out, everything that you have to say. You go on and on and on until you have no longer anything to say. And then you just let it sit. You just let it sit, and I can assure you, 100% of the time, you're gonna come out of it feeling very differently, and like actually hearing yourself saying those things is going to help you process things in a different way, and like hear them in a different way, see them in a different way. So that's another way. Um, like punching some pillows, everyone, punch some pillows. If you're someone who needs to release emotionally, like through your body, physically, go to a boxing class, go for a run, go to a hit class, punch some pillows, throw some balls, right? Really, really release that energy. It's about releasing the energy and the emotions so that now your mind can be clear and see things differently and process things differently and show up differently.
You said both of you said something I think is fundamentally clear is the awareness piece,
Mm-hmm.
right? You cannot be aware of what you're doing unless you're in the present moment. So the fact that Marie recognizes that she's in a moment, she's in whatever she's in, her hamster wheel, or like I shaking her snow globe, um, means that you're in the present moment, right? There's no other way you can notice that, right? Whether you're thinking of the future or you're thinking of your past, you're doing it in the present moment. So for me, it's always been the awareness piece, and allowing the fact that we have this built-in mechanism within us that gives us early warning signs for our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you use an analogy like a stoplight where you've got a green light, a yellow light, and a red light, right? A green light, everything's good, right? You're flowing, right? You're happy. There's no issues, right? Traffic is going, life is going, right? But the minute that we get a rub or a minute or that something feels off kilter, that's a yellow light. And I was talking to a client today about that, and he was saying this. I says, what do you do when you get to a yellow light or you see a yellow light? And he says, well, the law says that I have to, slow down and be cautious. And I said, have you ever sped up on a yellow light?
Always.
Oh, right. So we're not taking it we're taking it as advice, not as the gospel, right? And I said, well, what do you do at a red light? And he says, well, I'm supposed to stop. And I says, have you ever run a red light? And I'm thinking, metaphorically, when I look at relationships and various other things, there are many times I've ran red lights. I've let my emotions, I've let my slow globe, my reactiveness, right, take over. And it's the red lights is stop, right? Stop what you're doing. Do whatever you both have suggested, but it's key that we recognize the feelings. If we can get them at the yellow light, great, but if you're in the red light, you're not good to anybody, right? You're reactive. You can only be creative in a green light situation, right? That so settling down, whatever way it works for you, um, find what works for you, right? Experiment, try different things, try the empty chair, try punching. I love breathing. Um, I um, I think breathing is part of life. But anyways, it's
Yeah, I do
something.
it every day too.
Yeah, but it's important for me. Like when I realize, oh, I got something surfacing, I got something boiling, right? Just a nice cleansing breath, and it centers me quite easily. And if I'm still stuck on a yellow light, I'll just tell the person, I say, you know what, this is not the time.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't the time. It's important, and I'll get back to you. But for me, it's just not the time. So yeah, interesting stuff.
Can I add one thing to that? The
Absolutely.
It's kind of an interesting little, I'm a total science nerd geek, give me quantum biology and epigenetics and psychoneuroimmunology, and I just like, I'll nerd out all day long. But feelings have a chemical shelf life. So feelings go like this in our body, as far as the chemistry that goes along with them, of like, it's said to be like 90 seconds if we don't feed them.
Exactly.
So in that time, that if we don't feed them, so distraction, that's why distraction is one, it's often used in like a weight management stuff that people are looking to, because if you can distract yourself from that, whatever, for like 90 seconds, it's like something new comes in. Like we're like squirrel, right?
Yeah.
We really are. And so you can use some constructive distraction. And I would even go so far in these so that you feel like you're doing something, so that, Maria, maybe you don't feel like you're just walking away from something or being avoidant, or something, but that you can, the O in my CEO paradigm, so the ownership part, that sometimes you can take that focus off of all the out there's and the them, and bring it in here and be like, what is my part? What tiny thing? And sometimes you're really going to pull apart because we're feeling like blaming. I didn't do it. I didn't say it. I didn't want it. It's okay, but what did I do? What part of this do I have? What role do I have? Where's my
Mhm.
power? And bring that ownership. So you kind of serve two purposes, because that's where you can be constructive and productive anyway. But it also is that distraction. So if you can sit in feelings and just kind of go, oh, I see you there, anger. I'm going to watch my 90 seconds. I'm not
Yeah.
feeding you. You can start it up for all I freaking care. I'm going to wait my 90 seconds. And oh, look at that. So and so just walked by. I mean, and you have to, set yourself up to be able to do those. And another thing is just feel like, to sit down and with the breathing to say, where is this in my body? Like, what does it feel like?
Mm.
And anger, one, is usually really constrictive in the chest, as are a lot of feelings. Fear also, we can get really constrictive. Anger affects the liver, is pretty detrimental to that chemistry. But you can sit, where is it? What's the quality of it? What's the sensation? And when you get really investigative instead of reactive, it changes the quality. That as soon as you acknowledge things, it's almost like they're saying, pick me, pick me, pick me. And if you acknowledge them and go, okay, I see you, I hear you. What does it feel like? Is it tingly? Is it warm? Is it sharp? Is it tension, or is it actually, is it painful? What is it? I see you. It has a kind of magical
Yeah.
way of diffusing and defusing us. So hopefully those, and find out, like Rick said, try out all these little things and keep notes on what works, what clicks, and they'll change too. Things change for me. Like what's working right now? What worked before? Like, your resources and toolbox, just build the toolbox and then you have choices.
Yeah.
And also, I want to add, I love that you made this point. I want to add that it's sometimes it's not going to work the first time. It's a muscle.
No.
Like again,
Yeah.
all of these techniques and tools and resources are muscles that we're building. So, maybe the first time is not going to work right away. Maybe it's just going to work after a little while. But the more you do it, and the faster it's going to work, right? So don't get discouraged if you still feel really triggered. I mean, we're talking about feelings on steroids when we're talking about
Yeah.
divorce and separation and custody. Like those are like, I mean, what else can really trigger you more than that, right? So you're really dealing with something super challenging. Be patient with yourself because it's going to take some time, right? It's going to take some time and it's going to take some practice. But guess what? The more you practice it, you don't get perfect at it, but you get better at it,
Sure. Yeah.
and you're wiring it in. The more
And
you
you're
do it,
learning.
and the more you're wiring in that reaction versus the immediate, reactiveness that you have, just from fight or flight.
And you're learning more about yourself. right?
You learn more
It's a
about yourself. Yeah.
self-discovery piece, right?
Yeah.
So excellent. Wow. Boy, did we fill an hour.
Oh, we can feel
Wow,
another.
I know. We could. So next week? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's like that's perfect. Kimberly, thank you so much.
Thank
I
you for
I
having me.
learned so much
Pleasure.
about that world, right? That mysterious world.
For giving us the view from the other side of the
Well,
desk, right?
that and I just love the fresh perspective and the fresh look, I guess, um, of how you're taking what looks like a very rule-oriented world and mixing it in with humanity, humistic, whatever word you want to create there.
The human aspect of it,
Yeah.
right? I think sometimes it does feel like the human aspect of it gets
Well, and
lost.
the
It
same
feels
thing
very
with
much like
with
that.
medicine, like we were all taught that we had to take emotions out of all decisions. Who's going to get the kidney, right? Who's going to live tomorrow, right? Or do I treat this one or treat that one, right? In triage, but it's yeah, and that community has starting to shift that to understand that there's an emotional side to decision making, and we need to honor both sides, right? And I think you're on the forefront of something, Kimberly. I think you're going to rock the world out there.
Well, and just so people know, because people aren't aware that there's more than one choice. There is this body of, and it's growing, and there's momentum growing of family law that's called, as a term of art, called collaborative family law. I mean, I have
Oh,
always practiced collaboratively, collegially, and that, but there is what a thing called collaborative law, and it's like everybody signs on. It's a team effort. So there's still attorneys on both sides. There's often a financial professional, depending on what individuals need. There might be therapists, counselors, coaches, but that everybody signs agreements at first that says we're not going to court, we're not going to trial.
hmm.
We are going to figure this out in a collaborative way. And it's not that things don't, there's still going to be triggers and points
Yeah,
that get heated, but it's everybody's agreed up front that we're not leveraging for trial all the way, because that's sort of a necessary aspect. We have to keep an eye on that in litigation, which is why I'm pivoting out of litigation. That's my whole point. In one, I'm moving into collaborative law.
hmm.
And then two, also into this coaching, the coaching aspect, the
Yeah,
guidance side, the DCGPS.
yeah,
And then I'm also, as an aside, under Oregon law doing, and it's called Oregon Family Law a la carte, OFAC, which is going to be all non attorney of record stuff. So I will help support, coach people on bits and pieces and parts, because some people can't afford a full retainer, but they might be able to report, I need help to get this done. I need help to know which form, how do
hmm.
I file it? I need help to negotiate mediation. They can buy pieces. So it's what is called unbundled services.
Yeah,
So I'm just, it's a la carte. You pick and choose, and people can control their costs more as
yeah,
well. It's not all or nothing.
yeah,
And that's what people think,
yeah,
I can't afford an attorney. It's like, well, what does that mean? Right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
there is collaborative law out there, and people can look for practitioners that do that, because most people don't know it exists.
yeah. Wonderful.
Or something that is more unbundled and a la carte, so that you're not left without any input. And if all else fails, get free consults all day long.
Yeah,
Call attorneys up, find out who will do consults, 30-minute consults for free, and have a good list of questions of what you need, and do free
yeah.
consults all day long.
Nice, nice.
Amazing.
You will
So
feel better. You won't feel as, alone
yeah.
in the ocean out there.
So
Thank you so
anybody that's
much.
watching the recording, please feel free to still put your questions or comments in the comment section. We'll make sure it either gets to Kimberly or Fatì, um, and share this episode with people that are
Anyone that
interested.
needs to hear it, yeah.
Like I said, I it's called shifting perspectives, but there is so much more in this episode that I think will benefit so many people, regardless of
Absolutely.
where they are right now. So
Kimberly, do you want to tell us where people can find you? What's the best way to find you? Uh,
Best
I
way to
put your
find me,
website on there. Is that the best place?
Sure. The website is skilledclarity.com. Apparently you told me the LinkedIn is not going to Skilled Clarity. I mean, it's Kimberley Mansfield. I'm on LinkedIn. It should be with the / Skilled Clarity because it all got switched over. Well, at different times, but I will check up on that. Also, Skilled Clarity ESQ on Instagram. You can DM. Kimberley Mansfield on Facebook.
Hold on, I want to put your website here. When I tagged you actually on LinkedIn, it let me do it. So I'm not sure what was going on with.
Oh, and you know what? I saw that it tagged that actually. So it should have.
So I'm not sure what was happening. So here's Kimberly's website that you can find all her information. Reach out to her if you have any issues, which I don't see why you would.
And what's on there, just so you know, is like to click for a 30-minute exploring keys to clarity call. So that's what the links on there are. It doesn't necessarily have a phone or email on there, but it will get to me. And again, you can DM me at Skilled Clarity ESQ at Instagram as well, on Instagram or LinkedIn.
Right on.
Providing LinkedIn works.
Amazing.
Cool. Well, thank you again.
So much.
Thank you. I'm glad I showed up today.
So I went from 1 to 3. Amazing. It was so nice.
Yeah, well, Fatì, anytime you get stuck again, you just let me know if you need a wingman.
Absolutely. You've
Yeah,
been a lifesaver.
Yeah, no, it's great, and I have a feeling there'll be a part 2 in the future too. So I know we're doing some rebranding and relooking at a few things. Apparently, Rick's going on an extended holiday, but
nice way to slip that in, Rick.
I'm just saying. Anyway, thanks again. I'm going to close the episode, and please watch the recording. Please share this out there, and then
reach out to Kimberly. Yeah, it's really worth the 30 minutes. Trust me.
Oh, yeah. I could see so much value in that.
Yeah,
all right.
Absolutely. All right.
Bye.
Thanks, you guys.